It was my first time in Costa Rica. We were spending the day on a beautiful stretch of beach of white silky sands and cliffs shaped by the constant churn of water. Palm trees swayed in the gentle wind. Birds sailed the same breeze in a cloudless blue sky. Little crabs scurried across the sand into their hidey holes. Lazy waves lapped at the shore. The tide was low, offering an irresistible glimpse of the world that lay beneath those waves. I ventured out onto cliffs slick with seaweed and pools of salt water, eager to sate my curiosity. Some crevices had trapped odd-looking slugs and tiny fish. Others held seashells and barnacles. I crouched down by each one to snap photos and study these creatures a while. Then, wedged in under a small outcropping near the retreating ocean, I spotted something else. A couple of grey shapes, firmly attached to the drying rock. One was upside down, the other latched onto the rock face below. They were surprisingly large, about the size of my hand, far larger than any of the other critters that had been caught in the low tide. Both of them were oblong in shape, perfectly symmetrical, their backs segmented into even strips. Each one had a darker strip around the base, thick and scaly, as though a snake had wrapped itself around them. I stared at these things with a mix of trepidation and wonder. They were as still as the rocks around them, the individual plates the same color and texture as those rocks. Yet I knew instinctively that these were alive. Living beings, the likes of which I had never seen before. They looked odd, unsettling in their strangeness. They looked alien. Welcome to Odd Little Tales, an ongoing project that examines the strange and the unusual through the eyes of a skeptic. While I approach these stories from a skeptical point of view, I have no wish to dismiss or mock them. Something happened. Something was the spark that brought them to life. I seek to understand these strange experiences, to, perhaps, discover even stranger truths buried within them. So please, make yourself comfortable, and join me as I investigate this odd little tale. We humans are land-dwelling creatures. On land we have spread far and wide, again and again coming up with clever ways to mitigate dangers that would normally prohibit us from venturing up mountains and down caves, ways to survive the blistering heat or the numbing cold. Water, however, has thwarted us for a long time. We can't breathe in it. We may be able to swim and dive, but sooner or later, our bodies will tire and succumb to a watery death. We are working on it, of course. We've invented submersibles and robots and scuba diving. We have sonar. We have drills that can reach the bottom of the sea. Yet despite all this, only a fraction of our oceans has been charted and explored. New underwater species are discovered every year. There is something about this vast undiscovered domain that tickles the imagination. Anything could be hiding down there. Some of them might appear unexpectedly, perhaps caught in a trawler's net or washed up on a beach for us to gawk at. Perhaps caught in a tidal pool at low tide. There's only one other realm that is equally beyond our current reach: outer space. Anything could be hiding out there, too. Some unknown alien life form could plummet from the skies for us to gawk at down here on the planet's crust. Some claim it's already happened. So, which were these strange things I found wedged into the cliffs? I hope you won't be too disappointed to know that these are not alien pods from a world outside our own. These are chitons. Some North Americans pronounce it chiton, but I will honor the Greek origin of the word and stick with chiton. Chitons are marine mollusks that have been on this planet for a very long time. Far longer than us humans. Thanks to their hardened shell of segmented plates, they are well documented in the fossil record, all the way back to the Cambrian period some 500 million years ago, long before the age of dinosaurs. By comparison, the existence of humans amounts to little more than the blink of an eye. It's amusing to think that to a chiton, we are the strange new aliens that have invaded their world. Biologically speaking, they are intriguing creatures. The scaly base is the chiton's girdle, which holds the rigid plates together. Underneath it all is a foot, similar to that of a snail, with which it can slowly creep along when submerged, or adhere tightly to rock to protect itself when caught by low tide. It does not have eyes. Instead, its shell is embedded with tiny organs capable of detecting light, which are all linked together to form a kind of massive compound eye that can detect the shadow of a predator passing by. It has no head or brain, but it does have a mouth tucked away in its soft underside, along with a tongue covered in teeth. It has gills, a digestive system with a stomach and intestines that break down the algae and tiny invertebrates it rasps off the surfaces it clings to, a three-chambered heart, a curious mix, then, of the familiar and the unknown. To us humans, it is the unknown that tends to grab our attention. Our minds evolved to seek patterns and categorize the world around us. When we encounter something new, our brains automatically try to match its traits against things we already know. It's a useful feature, one that lets us make sense of our world and distinguish between categories like food and danger. It's one that has allowed our species to thrive as long as it has. However, when something is so foreign to us that none of our existing categories apply, we instinctively register it as a potential threat, an evolutionary take on better safe than sorry. Caution is what allowed our ancestors to survive and eventually bring us into this world. We fear the unknown because it benefited us to do so. This instinct can go awry, of course. If we let this fear rule our perspective, then everything becomes a threat, no matter how benign or beneficial it actually is. An ancestor who never left the cave or chose to destroy every new creature they encountered would not have made it far after all. We, as a species, would never have braved the oceans and spread across the world. We would never have figured out what to eat in these new lands, would never have domesticated any furry companions, would never have harnessed fire for our own uses. We would have missed out on so much. It makes sense, then, that when I crouched down to observe my newly discovered chitons, I heeded both caution and curiosity, the same combination that guided humanity to where it is today. Naturally, what registers as unknown is highly dependent on one's personal experiences. You may have recognized these creatures long before my grand reveal. Had I approached a local on this beach and shown the photo I snapped of my unsettling find, I would likely have received the local name for them, possibly with a disinterested shrug. The chitons only looked strange to me because I'd never seen anything quite like them before. It's no wonder, then, that most creatures that live in the deepest fathoms of the sea look so unsettling to us. There's a reason I drew the comparison between the deepest seas and outer space at the start of this discussion. Both are such incredibly hostile environments to us humans that we've barely gotten a peek at what lies within. The deep oceans are cold, murky places, devoid of all sunlight. At these extreme depths, the pressure of the water alone would collapse our squishy human lungs and crush bones and soft tissues alike. But unlike outer space, we have found definitive life at the bottom of our oceans. We have deep-sea giants like colossal and giant squid, both examples of abyssal gigantism, that is, the tendency for deep-sea species to grow much larger than their taxonomic cousins in shallower waters. At the other end of the scale, we have minuscule microorganisms like bacteria that can withstand conditions so extreme that we once thought no life could possibly thrive in them at all. These extremophiles are able to live comfortably in places like hydrothermal vents at temperatures that would melt our proteins to goo, or deep-sea trenches with tremendous pressure that would crush us. This brings us to another link to outer space. Astrobiology is a scientific discipline that explores the possibility of extraterrestrial life through the lens of the origin and evolution of life as we know it. In other words, astrobiologists observe life on our planet to figure out ways in which other types of life might evolve on planets vastly different from our own. The study of extremophiles, like those found around hydrothermal vents and deep-sea trenches, offer insight into how life pushes its limits to adapt to its environment, as well as offering clues for how to search for life on other planets with similar conditions. The creatures that live and thrive down in our deepest oceans are very much products of that environment, because they've evolved in worlds so thoroughly different from ours. Their shapes and adaptations read as unfamiliar, not only to curious tourists like my good self, but to us humans as a whole. We have a tendency to try to figure out other living beings by projecting our own experiences onto them. We use our feelings, our behaviors, and our intentions to understand others. This is a consequence of the way our brains are built, of the social structures it evolved to examine and uphold. We need to understand our fellow humans in order to function in society. So it isn't surprising that we instinctively try to extend this ability to other species. However, we rely heavily on faces for our signaling and communication, not just speech and language, but the expressions and body language that go with them. We anthropomorphize everything from pets and other animals to toys and tools, even forces of nature like weather or natural disasters. It's an instinctive way of connecting with the world, but trouble can arise when, say, animals don't follow the rules we have projected onto them, or when we lack the skill to read them correctly. We adore our cats and dogs, but recoil in disgust and horror from centipedes and spiders. When we come face to face with some deep-sea creature that quite possibly has no face at all, like a chiton or giant phantom jelly or a colossal squid, they are unreadable to us. We find them weird and unsettling, frightening. Monsters of the sea. That is what the tall seafaring tales claim, at any rate. In reality, as monstrous and alien as these creatures may seem to us, they are simply fellow inhabitants of this planet. They're made from the same building blocks as us: chromosomes, genes, proteins. You may have heard that we humans share about 98% of our DNA with chimpanzees. As intriguing as that is, to me, the truly mind-boggling fact is that we also share a significant portion of our genetic material with far stranger creatures, including mollusks like slugs and snails, and chitons. Cell division, cellular metabolism, the way our proteins are encoded and assembled. Even as different as our bodies are, they share many of the same fundamental mechanisms. The designs may differ, but we all use the same type of blueprints to describe them. To a hypothetical visitor from some distant star, humans and chitons might seem like cousins. This strange kinship among all living creatures here on Earth, no matter what we look like, is what truly fascinates me about life on our planet. Thank you for listening to this odd little tale. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe for more odd tales in the future. If you'd like to know more about today's topic, I've posted some links in the description. They're not sponsored links, just sites of interest that I came across during my research that make decent starting points for digging deeper. Until next time, take care when peeking into the depths.